You could join us tonight. This webinar series is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. You can support the CAF through membership or through a donation. For details on how you can further our education mission, all you have to do is visit our website, commemorativeairforce.org. Now, as you enjoy tonight's presentation, questions might come to mind, and if you do, just type them in the chat box, and we'll save some time at the end to answer any questions that we don't cover during the presentation. So joining me tonight from the Joe Foss Squadron in South Dakota is Rick Tupper and Mark Gregg. Gentlemen, take it away.
Hey, well, thanks, Steve, for inviting us. We're happy to be a part of this. My name is Rick Tupper. I've been a CAF member since 2012. I was our first squadron leader for the first 6 years of our squadron. I've also been the director of the Sioux Falls Air Show. I'll let Mark introduce himself, and then we'll get going with our presentation.
Hey, I'm Mark Gregg. This is either my 29th or 30th year in the CAF. I've been in a lot of units and usually many at a time, toured with a lot of airplanes and got to have some great experiences. Happy to be with the Joe Foss Squadron.
So what we wanted to do tonight is give you kind of a little bit of history about the Joe Foss Squadron, our aircraft, where we've been since our inception in 2012 and kind of where we're at today. And so how I want to start is how we got here. And I've had the fortune of being involved with the Sioux Falls Air Show for many years, and I've been the director of the air show. And we do an air show in Sioux Falls every 3 years. And the air show draws about 150 to 160,000 people on a 2-day air show. So it's a pretty good event for our area. I always joke that we do 3 years because after you get done, everybody says, we're never doing this again. And then about a year later, the pain is gone, and we realize, hey, that was a lot of fun. Let's try it again. So we start planning another air show, and then so we keep doing it every 3 years. So with every 3 years, we generally get a jet team, and it's a pretty good show for the Midwest. And what we realized is every year we also had participants for the Commemorative Air Force. So in 2012, we kind of started looking back at all of the CAF units that had participated with us. And, you know, we've had the B-29, B-24 squadron that was here, Arizona Air Base, Missouri Wing would come up with their aircraft, Tora. The two closest CAF units were Minnesota Wing, and they'd come over with Miss Mitchell and some of their other aircraft. And also the unit down in Council Bluffs, Iowa, where Gunfighter is stationed, and some other aircraft, so they'd come up. And every year we seem to get Red Tail. So we looked at all of the CAF groups that were always participating. And after the 2012 show, we kind of looked at why didn't we have a CAF squadron or unit here in Sioux Falls? So we kind of began that discussion at that point. And so I reached out to the CAF headquarters, and Bob Stinovic was our point of contact at that time. And Bob agreed to fly into Sioux Falls and help us start to plan what it would look like to establish a new squadron in Sioux Falls. So, you know, it was kind of grassroots. We started hitting out all of the current CAF members that may have been part of other units that lived in our area. We held our first meeting at an FBO here in Sioux Falls. And Bob flew up for that, and we started talking about what it would take, and it was definitely, we had the interest. So we decided that we were going to create a squadron here in Sioux Falls. So we kind of got going with that piece, and then you kind of start putting the pieces together. We initially looked at, what kind of aircraft would we want to fly here, kind of branding the unit, if you will, also membership. So how do we get members engaged and find them? So, what we did is we right away started looking for an aircraft. And at that time, we knew that we wanted to stick with something that would be smaller and easy enough to take care of. And unfortunately, there had been a CAF member down in Council Bluffs that had passed away, and their aircraft, the family wanted to keep in the CAF. So we were in the market. And at that point, the Council Bluffs group had an L5 and an L3 that they thought would be available. And in discussions, the L3 had been sold and went away, so we really had the L5 to look at. And the CAF was great to work with. We worked with them about purchasing that L5 and then getting it into the CAF inventory. And then we started fundraising for it. So we got our plane picked. We knew what we wanted to do, and we knew that the amount that we needed to raise. So we kind of kicked it off right away. The next step was really trying to identify, what our squadron was going to be named. And, so we were looking in South Dakota, like the Rushmore Squadron, those kind of Dakota type things. But what we were really overlooking is where we are located. And we were sitting at Joe Foss Field, which is the name of our regional airport. And it was like a light came on, and we realized that, Joe Foss, and one thing we want to do tonight is give you some history about Joe Foss and the amazing person he was, not only a World War II veteran, a Medal of Honor recipient, but what he accomplished in his lifetime. And when we looked at what the CAF's mission is it became very clear we had to be called the Joe Foss Squadron. So we selected Joe Foss as our namesake. And unfortunately, at that point, Joe had already passed away. So we had talked with the family, and we engaged to make sure that that name was going to be carried on and that we could continue to educate his history and, World War II history in general. So, the next step that we kind of looked at is branding the squadron, if you will. So what we did is we selected a local artist that helped us develop our unit patch. What you're seeing right now is the Joe Foss Squadron patch that you'll see our members wear on their uniforms. We sell it in our PX, and we also give it out to donors once they hit a certain level. And but there's history behind just the patch. And what I want to do is tell you a little bit about the history on the patch. So when you look at the patch, obviously it carries Joe Foss's name. We selected the image of two cards because one of these, Joe earned his Medal of Honor when he was with VMF 115, and he also was with VMF 120, I believe it was. And those units are still in existence today. So one of the squadrons is their moniker was Joe's Jokers. So we had kind of reached out to them and chatted with them, and they still wear the Joe's Jokers patch. So we recreated the Joe's Jokers patch. And what we did is we put an F4F Wildcat on the patch, and this would be the F4F Wildcat that Joe flew while with the Cactus Air Force over Guadalcanal, and when he earned his Medal of Honor. So we put that on. We also put the ace. Joe is one of the highest earning Marine Corps aces in history. So we wanted the patch to be representative of Joe and his history. So we put that all together, and so this is what you see. That's our squadron patch, and that's kind of how we brand our squadron now. So we have it on our aircraft. You'll see it. Again, it's always trying to show what accomplishments Joe Foss had and what he meant. And what's an interesting story that I want to share is when we did our air show in, I think, 2016, I had reached out to VMF 115, and VMF 115 was in the process of transitioning from flying F-18 Hornets to the F-35. And when I told them that we were going to do a tribute to Joe Foss, hands down, they said they were going to be a part of it. So what was really cool is their commanding officer actually flew one of their F-18s, and their squadron was actually deploying to the Middle East at that time, but they held one aircraft back so they could participate in our air show. So the commanding officer flew this F-18 in to be a part of it. And also, as you look on the side, they had put Joe's name on the side of the aircraft. When the commanding officer was climbing out of the F-18, I had approached him, and I wanted to tell him, some history about Joe Foss, and he kind of stopped me. And he said, Rick, you don't have to tell me anything about Joe Foss. Joe Foss is a Marine Corps hero. Everybody in the Marine Corps knows Joe Foss. When you go to any Marine Corps base, you're going to find something named after Joe Foss. So even to this day, Joe Foss is a hero, a Medal of Honor recipient, a Marine that they all look up to. So it meant a lot for us to be carrying that Joe's Jokers moniker, if you will, and then to continue to carry that namesake. So that's how we kind of got the Joe Foss and trying to brand our squadron, if you will, to start with. And it certainly helps that we have the Marine Corps currently behind us on everything that we're doing as well. So, as we got that going, what we wanted to do is, we really looked at, the fun stuff that the CAF brings to its members. And this was my opportunity. when we were going to do a grand opening event, our very first event now as the new Joe Foss Squadron, the newest CAF squadron at that time, I got a phone call from the B-29 squadron, and they were up in Fargo, North Dakota at the time. And they said, if you can get up to Fargo, you can fly down to Sioux Falls in the B-29. So obviously, if I had to run up there, I was going to get up there. So I found my way to Fargo, and this is just being a good CAF member, the benefits and the opportunities that are going to come to you. And I can not explain to you the thrill I had sitting in the nose of that B-29 on takeoff from Fargo, and the experience that was flying up here. So yeah, we give those experiences and examples out to all our members, just so they all have a passion, obviously, for World War II aircraft and the World War II veterans. And this is just a great opportunity for them to be a part of maintaining that history. So we were fortunate when we were going to do a hangar dance for our very first grand opening event, and the CAF again was awesome, and they right away said that they would support us, and they supported us by sending us the B-29 squadron. So you can see here, this is the hangar that we're based out of. It's the one of the 2 FBOs in the Sioux Falls at Joe Foss Field, and they gave us one of their hangars to put the hangar dance on. And we nosed the B-29 right in for that night. We had a 1940s theme, so the band was playing 40s music. People were wearing 40s attire, and for a kickoff event, it was a ton of fun. And obviously, when you get the aircraft hardware around it, just the feeling is amazing. So for a first event, I think we did a pretty good job in kicking that off. And we were supported by a lot of different groups. And our first group of members, I think when we started, we probably had, I think we were fortunate, we were between 40 and 50 members that started off with us, and everybody wanted to participate. So it's when you get a shot like this that you get to get up next to Fifi, and again, seeing that nosed into a hangar like that it's just breathtaking. But again, we had a lot of support from a lot of other Warbird supporters, and also this is a photo that we wanted to share at our grand opening event. The gentleman in the Marine Corps uniform is Claude Hone. Claude was a World War II F4U Corsair pilot, and also a local hero of ours. He was also one of the founding members of the South Dakota Air National Guard, so he flew P-51s. But Claude became one of our members, and so he's on our inaugural list of members, and he was there to sign his document. And that's one sheet form that we're going to keep forever, is our history on who was our first founding members. And Claude was a character. Claude flew the Corsair in World War II, and then the P-51 and with the South Dakota Air National Guard. And he just passed away in the last couple of years. I think he was 99 years old when he passed away, and he was still golfing the week before he had passed away. So very fortunate that we had an opportunity to get to know Claude and get him to be a part of our CAF group. So the event went very well. You can see our L5 in the background there. And then the B-29 group and others were here for the week. So we were able to right away kick events off by allowing people to get rides on the B-24 and selling rides on the B-29 and other aircraft that were showing up. So we had support from a lot of different groups. This is just one of the days that we had everybody here. And Maverick Air Center is the FBO that has been great to us. They let us use their space for meetings. We hangar our aircraft in one of their hangars. And every year we do our hangar dance in one of their hangars, and they do it gratis. We don't have to pay for any of that. They've been an awesome partner for the CAF. So we love to bring them attention in any business that we can. And obviously when you get a shot like this, that picture right there is, I think, on the wall of their FBO as well. But we set up a World War II camp for that day. We had some people in the community that had a passion for World War II vehicles and that kind of stuff, and reenactors. So we had a nice little World War II camp set up. There's a 1942 Ford GPW that I actually own next to our L5. So when we have events, we love to pair those up. And this was, again, at our grand opening event. So these are just some other shots of some of the aircraft that flew in to support us on our grand opening. We had a couple of P-51s that came in. Obviously, the sound of those anytime you can hear is amazing, and it just draws attention across the community. Diamond Lil obviously was here as part of that group, and we had some other folks flying their own personal aircraft. So as we built the Joe Foss Squadron, we really realized there was three real major components that our squadron could focus on. And one, obviously, is Joe Foss. And, Joe being, like I said, a Medal of Honor recipient. And I think he is the highest earning Marine Corps ace. Now, there's going to be some argument about that because Pappy Boyington actually served, and I think they considered him to be the highest ace, but some of his wins were actually done when he was with the Flying Tigers, so not as a Marine. So I think as a Marine, Joe does hold the record. I'm sure somebody's going to challenge me on that somewhere. But so Joe Foss was our first thing. But the second thing is during World War II, Sioux Falls was home to the Sioux Falls Army Air Corps base. And their mission was to train crewmen on B-24s and B-17s, all the radio technical training. So, a lot of the radio operators that flew in B-24s or B-17s that were going to Europe actually came through Sioux Falls. It was an extremely large base. And actually, back in the 1940s, it was a base that really developed Sioux Falls to be what it is today. And we still do find some parts of that base in existence around Joe Foss Field. So Joe Foss Field is located where the Sioux Falls Army Air Corps base was located. And then, of course, the last piece that we're always proud of is the South Dakota Air National Guard. Joe Foss Field is also the home to the Fighting Lobos, the 114th Fighter Squadron. Joe Foss was the founding commanding officer of the South Dakota Air National Guard. And over the years, they've flown everything from the P-51, as you can see in this drawing, to what they fly now is the F-16. So when we do our hangar dances, we invite them over. When we do our air show, it's actually done as part of the 114th open house. So it's great to have the Air National Guard be a part of the CAF events, and we love to be able to support them as much as we can when we do these events. So that's a little bit of history about the Joe Foss Squadron is where we're at. What I want to do is I'm going to turn this over to Mark now and let him talk a little bit about the history of Joe Foss and who he was.
Well, it's an amazing honor for us to tell the Joe Foss story. Not only his World War II story is amazing, but his entire life is just full of accomplishment. He continued to be every man, the guy next door. He was humble, easygoing, and he loved to meet new people and talk about them. And he was a member of the CAF, and he would go to our air shows. And when I wear my squadron shirt, people come up and tell me Joe Foss stories. And they're all that he was such a nice guy, and he cared about them and their story. At wing staff, a woman who was a marshaller years ago said this tall fellow talked to her about the fighter. She was working the fighter ramp, and she talked to Joe Foss for about 20 minutes. And she said it was a pleasant time. One of the other marshallers walked over to her and said, "Do you know who you were talking to?" And she says, "No." It was Joe Foss. I hear the story over and over in all kinds of details, but it's the same thing. He's a nice guy. He cared about people. Joe Foss was born just a little east of the airport that now bears his name. His first experience with airplanes was watching the mail plane fly over every day. And watching that plane, he vowed to himself he would learn to fly. When he was 12, Charles Lindbergh was doing a tour of America after his transatlantic flight. And Joe pushed his way to the front of the crowd. He wanted to meet Charles Lindbergh. He said an Army officer actually threw him off the stage, but they met later. When Joe was about 15, his father bought him each a $1.50 ticket to take a ride in a Ford Trimotor flown by the legendary Clyde Ice. That same year, he saw a Marine Corps demonstration team flying the open cockpit biplane F-4B-4s. And it was that moment he decided he was going to be a Marine. He loved the uniforms. He loved the high-tech fighters that they were flying. Shortly after that, his dad was killed in a farming accident. And Joe took over running the farm and continuing high school. And he worked dozens of jobs all the time. He then graduated high school and went to college. He still continued to have an amazing number of jobs, but he also learned to fly and got a pilot's license. And he joined the South Dakota Army National Guard. He was in the 147th Field Artillery Regiment. I don't think he slept. He sort of kept that busyness his whole life. After he graduated college with a business degree, he hitchhiked, or he gave the farm to his younger brother, and he hitchhiked to Minneapolis and joined the Marines. He was in Florida, and he was thought to be too old to be a fighter pilot. I think he was 26. So they put him in a aerial photography unit, but he kept begging to get into the fighter units. And he was working on one unit. He said, if you take me, I will do all the scut jobs of the whole unit's officers. So he was accepted into the 121st VMF 121 as their executive officer. The unit was sent to the Pacific, and they launched their Wildcats off the escort carrier USS Copiahe to land in Guadalcanal. He quickly gained a reputation for aggressive, close-in fighter tactics and uncanny gunnery skills. On October 13th of 1942, he shot down 4 Zeros, but had his plane damaged so hard he had to do a very fast dead stick landing at Henderson Field. November 7th of that year, he was shot down over a neighboring island, but he was able to evade capture and get back to Guadalcanal and continue flying. He had 8 Wildcats under him, and it was called the Foss Flying Circus. 4 of the planes were the farm boys, and the other 4 were the city slickers. But the Foss Flying Circus shot down 72 Japanese airplanes, with Foss being credited with 26. That tied him with Eddie Rickenbacker for World War I, and it made him the leading ace of the day. And as Rick mentioned, Joe Foss is probably, to some, the leading Marine ace. Pappy Boynton did shoot, was credited with kills when he was with the AVG, but the AVG counted planes that were parked on the ground. So a lot of his kills were planes that were parked. So I have heard that people have tried to lobby the Marines and other groups to get the record changed, to get Foss #1. But Joe Foss was adamant that this wasn't a personal thing. We were trying to win the war, and it didn't matter who led in numbers. We just wanted to win the war. So Joe Foss didn't care about being #1. And so I guess we don't pursue it at all either. After he left Guadalcanal, he was awarded the Medal of Honor, and he was in Washington, D.C., where President Roosevelt gave him the medal. He was on the cover of Life magazine, and that picture of Joe Foss on Life is just an iconic picture. His little grin, he just radiates his humility. It's a wonderful, wonderful photo. He returned to the Pacific in 1944, and he commanded VMF 115. He was flying Corsairs then. He met Charles Lindbergh there, as Charles Lindbergh was helping develop long-range missions for our fellows. His malaria was quite severe, though, and Joe didn't have any more aerial victories. After the war, Joe started Joe Foss Flying Service at the airport that eventually would be named for him. He flew charters and did flight instruction, and eventually had 35 aircraft. Just as an aside, he had a Packard dealership as well. Then very soon after, he was asked to start the South Dakota Air National Guard, and he started the 175th Fighter Interceptor Squadron. He became a member of the unit's demonstration team flying the P-51 Mustang. During the Korean War, he was reactivated to active service, and he was the Director of Operations and Training for Central Air Defense Command, and he retired from the Air Force as a brigadier general. Foss was also into politics. He was South Dakota's youngest governor at 39. He was elected for 2 terms, and one of the first things he did is he sold the state airplane, and he did double duty. He would stay current in the P-51 Mustang while he was doing his governor business. So who has a cooler governor than that? A group of individuals were making a 3rd attempt to start an American Football League to compete with the very successful National Football League. They asked Joe Foss to be their first commissioner. His counsel made it actually succeed. He guided them through several rough spots that could have easily failed. One of his initial plans was that the winner of the AFL championship had to play the winner of the NFL championship in the ultimate title game. So Joe Foss invented the Super Bowl. Joe Foss also, he was a big hunter and fisher, and he produced and frequently starred in a television show called The American Sportsman from 64 to 67. All of us South Dakota boys grew up watching that and loving it. And he just talked about friendship, safety, and enjoying life. Joe Foss was also the president of the NRA for 2 years. Joe Foss, throughout his life, remained very humble, caring, and his main focus was improving his community and his country. And he started the Joe Foss, or the Foss Institute, just to teach civics and patriotism in the schools. He always valued friends and family, and he cared about everyone. So it's a great honor for us to carry on his story.
Thanks, Mark. We all wish we would have had an opportunity to meet Joe and learn more from him, but just hearing his stories, and it's amazing what one person can accomplish in their lifetime. And when you look at every role that he played, he always played a major leadership role. Mark just mentioned a few of the things. He was also involved with KLM Airlines, and I mean, it just kind of goes on. You kind of wonder how a person can accomplish that much stuff in one lifetime. But Joe was a pretty amazing person. So the next thing we wanted to talk to you a little bit about is tell you a little bit about our aircraft. So not only did we have the history of Joe Foss, we now, as the Joe Foss Squadron, had our first aircraft, which was an L5b, a 1944 Stinson L5b Sentinel. So that aircraft, like I mentioned, we picked up in 2012, and that's still with our squadron, and we love every part of it. Our pilots, I know it's an interesting aircraft to fly. And for us, we love to take it and display it. But as we were learning about the plane, we found out the history of that aircraft as well. And so, we found out that in 1944, as it was built, immediately after being built, it was turned over to the Army Air Corps, or the United States Army. And the first assignment was with the 71st Infantry Division, the Red Circle. And it went to Europe. It actually went over to Europe in 1945. So at the end of World War II, it was a part of the 71st Infantry Division. And what we're able to find so far is it appears that it was part of their artillery spotting or liaison type aircraft. So the 71st Infantry Division had history fighting it in 1945 to the end of the war in the southern part of Germany. So they had gone along the southern portions of Germany. Ultimately, they were involved with saving one concentration camp. They also connected up with Russian forces. So they've had some great history at the end of the war. And then our aircraft became a part of that history. Now, while they were still in Germany through 1946, then as the war ended, the airplane stayed in Europe and then became part of the 2nd Cavalry Group. From 1946 to 1947, our aircraft flew with the 2nd Cavalry Group, and they were in freezing. And then after that, it went on to the U.S. Constabulary in Germany. And the Constabulary generally had, each regiment had 9 L-5s assigned to it, and then also their TOE, as it says here, included the M26 Chaffee tanks, armored cars, and Jeeps. So they played a major role in post-war Germany. And this is what a constabulary unit would have looked like between 1946 and 1952. So we're pretty proud that the aircraft that we have now, we found that it had a actual history flying in Europe. And as you know, that at the end of the war, not a lot of those aircraft made it back across the pond. It was expensive, and so they were either given to foreign armies or they were destroyed. So we were fortunate that our aircraft that flew with the constabulary was then transferred back to the United States and became a part of the New York Civil Air Patrol. So it flew with the New York Civil Air Patrol for a number of years, and then ultimately was sold into the civilian market, and that's how the folks down in Council Bluffs, Iowa, ultimately got their hands on it. So we were able to, watch and look at the history of this aircraft, and now realizing that, we had something that we really need to take care of and show people. And it's a great story to tell people when they're getting a ride on our aircraft too, that, this aircraft flew in Europe in World War II. And you have the same experience riding in the back of that aircraft as those spotters did when they were flying in the southern parts of Germany during the war. So we're very proud that not only do we have a World War II hero as our namesake, but our aircraft also has a World War II history flying in Europe. So the other part that's really cool about this, as we've gone along, is obviously when we do our events, we invite all World War II veterans to come out, and we all know that those numbers are getting smaller all the time. But each time that we get an opportunity to engage one of those veterans, it's just life learning lessons and actually getting an opportunity to talk to somebody that was there. And it's amazing that, sometimes I think you can be at the grocery store and that little old man or woman standing in front of you that's slowing you down, you don't know what history they really have. And I had the honor of being involved with the South Dakota Honor Flight Program. And we took, I think, around 1,400 World War II veterans to Washington, D.C. to see their memorial. And each one of those 1,400 South Dakotans had a different story. And, we talked to veterans that had been every part of World War II, from, guys that saw the flag go up on Iwo Jima to, I talked to a gentleman that was part of the Nuremberg trials. So it's every chance that we get as a squadron, we want to bring those people out to honor them, but also to learn from them. And during our first event, that one that I told you about early on, we had an opportunity. There was an older gentleman that went up to our L5, and you could just see the look in his eyes. There was a spark there. And he stood in front of that propeller, and you could tell there was something. And one of our pilots went up and talked to him, and we found out that he had been an L5 pilot in the China-Burma theater. So right away we had to talk with him, and it was actually his birthday, I believe. So we gave him a ride in the L5 right away, and until he passed, he was a major part of our squadron, and we love his story and his history. And I'm going to pass it back to Mark and let him talk a little bit about him.
You bet. Well, QC Miles is from the Watertown, South Dakota area, but he is another example of the greatest generation. And I know especially Joe Foss didn't like that anyway. He didn't like that term, and most of these guys don't. But that generation stepped up, and what they did was amazing, and other groups of people didn't. So I'll leave it at that. But QC was just an amazing man. We just loved him. QC grew up on a farm. He ultimately was awarded 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 2 Air Medals, and a Bronze Star with 173 missions in L-5s in the China-Burma-India theater. His second DFC was pinned on him by General Claire Chennault, which is quite an amazing thing. He loved our L5, and he told me many times, he'd pat the airplane and said, "This airplane saved my life." He was very passionate about L5s. I did a oral history with him under the wing of our L5, and in all the amazing things I've done in the CAF, that's my favorite. He was such an amazing man, and his story was the best. He began his combat career flying as an artillery spotter for Chinese infantry units. We had American artillery units firing and American spotter planes directing the fire for the Chinese infantry. And that's what QC started to do. And he said that was incredibly dangerous. He flew the hump 12 times in an overloaded L5. And he told me details about that several times. And our pilots are just amazed that he could get the L5 to fly that high, especially overloaded. But he's obviously, it was doable. Clearing runways on recently captured airfields was a common L5 mission. He said that they would normally send 3 L5s with engineers with mine detecting units to clear the runways. They would send 3 thinking it's pretty easy to lose 1 or 2 of them as they're landing into a mined runway. He did recall that on July 4th, 1945, he was the first plane in, and he landed, and you stop as short as you can and stop as fast as you can. And he said he looked down and his left tire was 18 inches from a very large mine. And I can still hear his laugh as he said, "I was almost fireworks on the 4th of July." But I had just got back from Myanmar, Burma, when I interviewed him, and he could remember the geography better than I knew it. He knew every place he landed and the rivers, and it was wonderful talking to him. His Bronze Star was for a mission that he volunteered for. He flew deep behind Japanese lines to pick up a P-51 pilot who had been shot down. And QC just had to land out in the middle of nowhere, thinking the recognition signals that they'd worked out were actually this fellow. He accumulated so many missions because he said in his time off, he just hung out in the ops shack, and a mission would come in and he would fly it. So he got 173 missions, which was significantly more than anybody else was flying. But at the end of the war, he had enough points that he rotated home very quickly, where the rest of his squadron had to stay in Southeast Asia for months. Upon returning to the US, QC was a teacher, and he ultimately earned a master's degree in education. He worked as a principal, a superintendent, and a basketball coach. He took the Forestburg, South Dakota High School to the state basketball tournament, and QC is actually inducted into the South Dakota Basketball Coach Hall of Fame. QC and his wife had 11 children. 5 of them served in the military. Many of his grandkids are in the military now. One of his daughters is actually a member of our squadron. QC left us in 2018 at the age of 96, but everybody that knew him carries him deep within their heart. His laugh, his positive outlook, his humor, his drive, his amazing memory, our memories will cherish forever. We loved taking flights in the L5 with QC. When he would come to events, he would add so much of the experience for our customers and also us. We just loved him, and people loved to hear how the planes actually worked in combat. He did sign our door of the L5, and that is our most valuable piece. And I think of him every time I see that. He told me many times that he loved the CAF mission and that he greatly appreciated that we were preserving the airplanes and those stories that went with them. So QC will be with most of us all our lives. So we're happy to know him.
Thanks, Mark. And every one of the veterans that we have, we could tell you stories, and I know you all probably have those as well. And I think it's important that, you know, in one major thing that the CAF does well is that's how we document these, and that we're never going to forget them even after they're gone. I mean, QC will be a part of our squadron forever. And that, as you can see here, the way he signed our aircraft, that'll be there forever as long as we have that aircraft and it's flying, in recognition of him and all the pilots that flew the L5. So, you know, the Joe Foss Squadron has been fortunate that we've had the opportunity to meet a lot of these men and women that served during World War II, those that flew the aircraft, those that maintained the aircraft. And we really take it to heart that it's our job to make sure that we continue to educate the rest of the community about the sacrifices and the things that they did during that time frame. So our squadron has started many different initiatives to reach out to young folks. Also, you know, I'd mentioned that we do our annual hangar dance, and it's generally a 1940s theme hangar dance. The last one we did during the last air show, we had done a Vietnam theme. So we had a Vietnam rock band, if you will, there, but we invited Vietnam veterans out, and we had some Vietnam era aircraft to participate in. But one thing that Mark has been very aggressive with is reaching out to the youth of our communities also. So, you know, one thing, if I can throw a plug in for wing staff, a lot of the things that we've learned is by learning from each other. You know, we attended wing staff in Dallas, and, you know, I had the opportunity to go to, I think, the last one in Midland, and the people that you get an opportunity to talk to, what you learn from them, and not necessarily always in the sessions, but, you know, when you get down to the club, the things that you learn, you can bring home. And what we've done is we go with our ears open and our minds wide open, thinking about what we can do when we get back home. And, you know, that's one thing that Mark has done. And so, Mark, I'll let you tell a little bit about the Boy Scout programs.
Like Rick said, at Wing Staff, I heard about starting an education program with the Boy Scout Aviation Merit Badge. And it seemed like such an easy thing to do. The criteria for the badge are carved in stone. You just basically have to put some instructors and a venue together to do it. And so I built a 3-night program to get a scout his aviation badge. And we did it as a sort of a multidisciplinarian thing. Joe Foss Squadron runs it, but we have input from the Civil Air Patrol, Avera Care Flight, Experimental Aircraft Association, Women in Aviation, and the South Dakota Air Guard. And we bring in pieces from all of them to show kids how planes fly and how you can make your career around airplanes, or how you can just have fun with airplanes. And it's been a giant success. I think we've had 180 Boy and Girl Scouts. It works so well for our Boy Scouts that I went to the Girl Scouts and offered them a similar program. Decades ago, Girl Scouts had a aviation badge, but they haven't for a long time. So I just built one. We used the fun parts of the Boy Scout thing, and I eliminated some of the things that seemed like busy work. And the girls love it. There wasn't a patch, so we designed our own. I think Rick's wife designed the little airplane, biplane patch, and the Girl Scouts love this. The world has changed a little bit since we're doing it, and now we have girls that are in Boy Scouts, but all the kids and their parents are crazy about our classes. So we're hopefully going to have a session. We usually do Boy Scouts in the spring, girls in the fall. Last year, the pandemic eliminated them all. So I'm hoping we can have a late spring Boy Scouts, and then we'll do our Girl Scouts in the fall. But it's a great way to start an education program, and it's a lot of fun. We all enjoy it. It's just amazing to watch the kids learning the principles of flight, and then looking at the airplane and looking at the controls, and you can just hear their gears clunking and it all making sense. Then they ask these amazing questions. So I always look back and think that started at wing staff, like so many of the things we've been able to do. So if units aren't doing this, it's easy. I've actually sent my program to 4 or 5 or more units to get it going. So it just needs to be perpetuated by the CAF.
Yeah, and great job, Mark. I mean, it has been. I've been able to be a part of those, and again, like Mark said, to watch the twinkle in the kids' eyes. You know, first of all, I think sometimes we take for granted that we get to be around aircraft and we get to do some of this fun stuff, and it sometimes may become routine. They don't get that opportunity. So when you get to watch those kids and they show up and they see an airplane, and then when they find out they get to climb into it. And Avera Care Flight, Avera is a hospital system in Sioux Falls, and they've opened their arms, and they've always had their air ambulances open for us. They have their pilots and crews there, and they let the kids climb up into the cockpit, and so they'll see everything from a glass cockpit down to your regular tube type cockpits, and so they get a great opportunity, a great experience, and it is so fun to watch their experience and just get to see that excitement in the kids when they're around aircraft and get to learn about flying. Another thing that we get to do, and we're very fortunate in our area, is over in Granite Falls, Minnesota, is a beautiful museum at Granite Falls Airport called Fagan Fighters. If you have an opportunity to go out and research that, it is an amazing place. The Fagan family are dedicated to World War II aircraft, and they've kind of taken over the Granite Falls Airport. They've built several hangars that are, they look like World War II hangars, and the family owns probably somewhere in the area of 20 to 25 World War II aircraft. All of them fly. Actually, just within the last week, they took ownership and possession of an F6F Hellcat. So they own everything from 2 P-51s, 2 P-40s, a P-38, a B-25, an F-4F Wildcat that we love being the connection with Joe Foss, his Hellcat now, and a series of all kinds of other aircraft. So every year they do outreach stuff at their airport. So we get to be a part of that. We take our L-5 over, and we take some of our World War II tents, and our squadron members get to go over and be a part of their events. And we're honored to be there. It's always amazing. They can put their own air show on. They have so many aircraft, but that kind of attention draws a lot of people and a lot of other aircraft that come in too. So when the Fagans do an event, it is truly an amazing World War II event with aircraft from all over this region that are going to show up and be on display. So we're very happy, and they always fly some of their aircraft up to Sioux Falls when we do our events. So we'll frequently have one of their P-51s or their B-25 on the ramp when we have a hangar dance or one of our open houses. And again, that family is amazing, and I'd encourage you to go out and take a look at their website or their Facebook page, just to learn a little bit more about them. And they've got a great outreach to World War II veterans also, that they've done some history interviews with veterans, and they have those posted. So we're fortunate that they're within our region, and we love to support them. And again, they're a great supporter of the CAF. Another thing that the squadron has been involved with is we created what we've called our Hometown Heroes. So we created that logo for Hometown Heroes, and what it started off with is what we want to do is reach out to World War II veterans and give them kind of the mic, if you will, and let them tell their story. And this was one of the first ones that we had done with Ken Salisbury. Ken is still with us, and he is an amazing World War II veteran. You can look at the history. He was a C-47 crewman, and he had participated in every airborne drop that took place in World War II, all the way from North Africa through Germany. And I mean, he's still sharp as a tack, and he'll tell you stories about dropping the 82nd Airborne on D-Day, or during Operation Market Garden, he flew British paratroopers outside of Arnhem. So he's got an amazing story, and so we were able to give him the mic, if you will, and invite both members of our squadron and the community to come out and hear these stories. And we want to continue doing this with veterans. And again, like we all know, our World War II veterans are leaving us faster than we'd like, and so it's important that we get their stories out, and we give them that venue, so if they want to tell their story, they can. And what I learned from my honor flight days, it's amazing how quiet these World War II veterans are, and how they don't tell people their stories. I don't know that it's not that they don't want to. One veteran told me that when they came back from the war, everybody had a story, and they didn't want to make it sound like their story is more important than the others, so they didn't tell their stories. And now that they're getting into those twilight years, I think it's important that they're able to tell their families those stories, and also that we can learn from those stories. And like I said earlier, I had the opportunity to talk to veterans that served in every theater, every major combat, that are just right here in our own community, and we didn't really know it because we kind of just didn't look at that. So we want to make sure that while we still can, we're giving that opportunity. So our Hometown Heroes thing is something that we are proud of and want to continue with. Obviously the next thing is our L5 rides. Our L5 is a part of the rides program. So we do rides days, and we'll do several of them in the summer months when we have pilots available at all of our events. And as you can see in kind of some of these pictures, that nobody leaves that plane without a smile on their face. And it is just, our pilots do a great job. When you're in that, obviously you're flying. It's there's not a lot between you and the open air, so you're sitting back there and you have a great view of everything around you. And we love giving these people the opportunity to get up in our plane. And we start off by, we had a college professor that grew up in Luxembourg on the Battle of the Bulge battlefields, and he is one of our members. And he would start off, he'd take them into a room and give them a history of our airplane, and a little bit of World War II history, and then kind of try to put them into that. Like, you're climbing in the back of this plane, imagine that you were the spotter for the 71st Infantry Division as you were going out on a mission, and what would that look like, and how would you feel? And so he teed it up, if you will, before we passed them off to the pilots. And then you can see our ground crew would brief them on the safety aspects of the aircraft, get them hooked in, and then our pilots would do a great job and give them a ride of their lifetime. And as you can see, the smiles on their faces were, it was infectious, and that's why we do this, and it helps us continue to move forward with it. And our squadron has been very busy. We host Warbirds, other Warbirds every summer, so we're fortunate to have different groups come through, and we're always open to other CAF squadrons that are coming through if they're on tour, and if there's things that we can be helpful for. We always take our aircraft and members out to any airport events that are within the region. We've hosted pilot seminars in our hangar. We help the Special Olympics. The Special Olympics does their law enforcement aircraft airplane pull annually. So we provide the flight line crew to man the barricades, if you will. Mark does a great job with interviewing veterans, and here was an opportunity to interview a veteran that was a B-25 pilot in the CBI, and we were able to do that when Arizona had their B-25 here touring. And Mark, you want to talk a little bit about your Wine and Warbirds events?
Wine and Warbirds is another wing staff idea. The Mississippi wing does that as a fundraiser. And so you pair wines of a region from a World War II campaign. So we started with the Burgundy region and the invasion of southern France. So we tasted 4 wines and had some pairings from the region. And sommelier would give a description of the wine and the terroir. And while people were sampling, one of our members would give a short talk on one interesting aspect of that campaign. And so we raised money by selling tickets and a silent auction. And we thank the Mississippi Wing Fellows for the great idea. And once this pandemic is gone, we'll start doing it again. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was another event that we just love the opportunity to be able to talk about not only the CAF, but a piece of history and get to see again, that twinkle in people's eyes as they learn a little bit of something that they might not have known about, and the experience of the wines and the cheeses. So, our squadron has been very busy and active. We like that. Here's our current command staff. Chris Geringer is our squadron leader. Mark is our executive officer. We have some great people. Greg Lair is our ops officer. Greg is actually an active brigadier general in the Air Force, and he flies F-16s and our L-5. And the fun part about having a F-16 squadron stationed here is I always get these young F-16 pilots that come around and say, "Hey, I want to fly that L-5," and I get to tell them, "You can't handle that L-5." so that's the tough part is, flying an F-16 is exciting and sexy, but it's not as easy when you're flying that L-5. So it's fun to tell them that they just can't handle our aircraft. But General Lair does a great job as our ops officer and flies. And Brian Neves is our maintenance guy, and he knows everything about those type of aircraft. And so we've got a great group, and Gary Ray is our adjutant. So I send kudos out to our command staff, and they're doing a great job. And we're very proud to be a part of the Commemorative Air Force, and we're proud to have the Joe Foss Squadron. We want to honor his name and honor our aircraft and continue the mission of educating the people about World War II, the men and women that served, and the CAF. So I think that's what we have for you, Steve.
Super. Wow, you guys have got a lot of things going on. It's amazing for a relatively new squadron to be able to pull together not only the membership that you need, but also getting the aircraft, getting it flying, and then all the other activities that you've been able to pull together through the years. Is there some secret to your success, or is it just, a lot of good people coming together?
I don't know. It's sometimes you have a love-hate relationship too. It's a lot of work, and we have good people that step forward. And and again, I think we've been leaning on that piece of the history of Joe Foss, the Army Air Corps base, the South Dakota Air National Guard, and then just trying to draw and give people a place that if they have that interest in World War II and World War II aircraft, that here's the place you can be, and you can be a part of it. I mean, you don't have to just sit back and read about it. You can come out and touch our aircraft. You can come out and work on that plane. You can come and be a part of this.
Awesome. How many pilots do you have who are currently flying the L5?
Right now, that's the tough part, is finding tailwheel pilots is not easy anymore. I think right now we're sitting at 3 pilots. We'd love to have probably 5, but we've got 3 great guys that fly. But they're also like I mentioned, General Lair, and then we've got airline guys, and trying to work on their schedules. And, so when we're looking at rides days, it gets to be a challenge when you only use 3. And, one of our pilots, Brian Neves, actually took our aircraft out to Washington, D.C. For the Arsenal flight. So
Right.
we were honored to be a part of that.
And what, just basically, if someone's wondering, what are the sort of hour requirements that you would need for an L5?
Oh, good question. Mark, are you up on that?
I am not. And I'm looking at my pilot wife over here, and she's shaking her head that she doesn't know.
Okay, so in that case, we'll default to the CAF website, commemorativeairforce.org, and I know there within the operations files, you'll be able to find what it is. But as you mentioned, finding qualified tail dragger pilots is not always easy these days. So if someone's watching tonight or watching one of our rebroadcasts, and you've got some tail wheel time, and you're interested in the L5, make sure you get in touch with the Joe Foss Squadron. One of our viewers, Brad Miller, wrote in, and this is not a question, but it's kind of an information exchange, which is sort of a theme that's been going through your presentation. Brad says, my dad was a weather observer at Pyote Army Airfield in Texas from 1943 to 45. The weather squadron flew an L5 for data gathering purposes. He said the pilots would fly a tight corkscrew over the field, and they'd take temperature, pressure, and humidity readings in the back seat on the way down. And he said there's a detailed article about their duties in the Rattler, which was the base newspaper, and Texas Tech has just digitized every issue, and the collection is available online. So if you're interested in finding out more, guys, head out to the Texas Tech website and look for that. The Rattler, the base newspaper there. So that's available online as well. If someone is, we also had someone who has an L5 and they're looking to find more information about the L5s. It's really not an airplane that has a clearinghouse or a type club or anything like that. It's sort of a loose configuration of owners and operators, isn't it?
It is, and I think the CAF has a good number of L5s. Mm-hmm. What we've done is, and I know our pilots talk to each other squadrons that have L5s to learn some lessons about how they've been caring for it, and there's a trick to flying that. I mean, it's just like, I think they describe it like driving a big old truck in the air. It's got a mind of its own when it's on the ground, and you just have to know how to handle it.
That's right. And, if someone would like more information or has some questions, obviously contacting you through the website is the best way to do that, to get a hold of Brian or Gary to be able to answer some of those questions about the operations of the L5. Yeah,
just go to cafjoefoss.org, and if you send us a message, it'll get to us and we'll get it to the right person. And, that's what this is all about, is learning from each other and growing as we can.
And
all right.
Do watch the oral history of QC Miles on YouTube. Actually, if you just search QC Miles, it goes right to it. But I actually watch it over and over again because I just love hearing his voice. So recommend that to everybody.
Great. Rick, any final thoughts before we wrap up tonight?
No, we thank you for this opportunity. I mean, again, everything that I've learned since I've been a CAF member is it's really getting to know each other, learning what we've done, those lessons, what works, what doesn't work. And we're all kind of in the same boat. We want to honor our squadrons. We want to honor those men and women that served, and we want to make sure that we keep these aircraft flying. All
right, Rick, Mark, and everyone in the Joe Foss Squadron, congratulations on the success that you've built so far, and looking forward to bigger and better in 2021.
Thank you much.
And thank you for joining us for another CAF Warbird Tube webinar. If you ever have any suggestions for future topics or guests, please just drop Leah Block an email at media@cafhq.org, media@cafhq.org. And we'll be back next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Until then, thanks to tonight's guests, Rick Tupper and Mark Gregg from the Joe Foss Squadron. Gentlemen, have a great night. And for all of us, on behalf of the Commemorative Air Force, good night.